Hi, and welcome to the Brookdale Visiting Writers Series show. My name is Suzanne Parker. I direct the creative writing program here at Brookdale, and I'm part of the English faculty. I'm very excited to be talking today with Michael Thomas, who is the author of Man Gone Down, a multi-award winning book, which was also on several 10 best book lists of the year, and who teaches now at Hunter College and lives in Brooklyn. So, Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Wow, it's nice to have you here. I'm a huge fan of the book, but I thought for people who may not yet be familiar with it, and will be, because they'll go buy it after this, could you kind of tell us what the book's about, the story of the book?
I'm the last person you should ask about that. I don't think I could give you a plot. It's a man who's 35, is having a crisis of finances and faith and identity. Most importantly, he has to make about $12,000 in 4 days to find a place for his family, pay certain debts, and he sets out on that journey, not really believing he can do it.
All right. Well, that was really nicely done.
Was it? Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah. I like the fact that you have him in the friend's child's bedroom with a goldfish.
Yes.
And talking to the goldfish in the goldfish bowl.
Yeah, that's essential for any Odyssey. Yeah, goldfish.
Is that how you see this, as an Odyssey?
I do, yeah, I do. Certainly one of the mind, but it's New York, it's Brooklyn and Manhattan, and it's a search, and so much of a search that perhaps the journey obscures the ends. And it's an odyssey through memory. And there's a great uncertainty as to one arriving at some destination, or if that destination was the one you or one intended. So yeah, that's certainly the Odyssey underpins it. Realizing how long one's been away, and whether or not one can ever return to that place.
Or if even it was the right place for you to begin with.
If it was any place, really.
Yeah.
So, and the many routes and the many distractions and, let's say, adversaries or being detained, or any of those things that you find along the way.
Well, thematically, it's an incredibly rich book. And one of the things that struck me about it was how layered it is. You have, the setting in New York, but also the narrator, who never really is named, but who is shifting back to his childhood in Boston, and this kind of rich group of friends and characters he's associating with, and then he has the marriage that he's kind of trying to negotiate as well with his wife Claire. And it's interesting in the sense of how it's not working a very traditional linear structure. It's shifting backwards and forwards. And I'm wondering how you came to that structure, how you wrote the book, I guess, in a way.
Well, I think maybe it doesn't follow a contemporary conventional structure, but I think it's a classical, certainly a neoclassical structure. If we get back to the Odyssey or the Iliad, we're at war, but every time or often when people are about to meet in battle, there's a digression into the lineage of each, whose father was, whose father was, whose father was, and then we come back and forth in time. So certainly a lot of the poems I've read and many of the novels, Invisible Man is one. And whether or not he goes into the past, it's framed by the prologue and the epilogue of where he is now, but even in that somewhat linear narrative are his philosophical or metaphorical explorations of his condition at the moment, and whether or not this has always been his condition or where he is. So he has to step outside of the narrative to understand where he is, and sometimes has to step outside of that digression to understand where the digression has taken him. And also I think it follows, or I'd like to believe it follows, the standard jazz form, Coltrane playing favorite things, staying within the melody and then finding a different scale within the melody and a scale within that. So,
are you a big jazz fan then?
I think I'd be posing to tell you that. There's some jazz people I loved all my life that my dad introduced me to and his friends, and I spent a lot of time listening to jazz. So certainly big bands and swing, and then bop and cool and things like that. Up to Coltrane probably, and then it gets a little confusing for me.
Well, this is in the book as well too. I noticed that we actually had, for a previous Visiting Writers series, a poet who actually wrote a book called Leadbelly about the jazz musician Leadbelly. And when I remember reading the book, going, "Oh, there's Leadbelly. You're referencing it."
Yeah.
And there are a lot of references in the book. And I'm wondering, as a writer, when you sat down to write this book, had you mapped out what was going to happen? I mean, it really is. It's a 4-day journey. And without giving away the ending, because we won't want to, spoil that for anyone. Did you know where this character was going to end up?
Yeah, I did. Originally I thought it was going to be a 24-hour journey, but then I realized I'd have to account for all kinds of minutia, scratching his eyebrow, things like that. So I mapped it into 4 days. I don't free write ever. And I knew where he was going. What happened in between those points, I wasn't sure. What he would think, what he would see, or how it would change. But I wrote the first few paragraphs first and the last few paragraphs at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I had definitely points that I had to hit.
So did you work from an outline then?
Yes.
Kind of a mental one?
No, I write outlines
Oh, you
constantly.
do? You write them? Oh, wow.
Constantly. And rewrite them and lose them. And
I'm dying to ask, like, how many outlines did this book go through?
I don't know. All I know is I have a recycling bag in my office at school, and I brought in an exhibit or a show and tell for some of my students, and I showed them the notebooks I used for 2 chapters, and the trash bag's full. And I can't decipher. Most of it's indecipherable to me. But sometimes I'll pull a notebook out and I'll see something I never included. A passage, or I found chapters I'd forgotten about, things like that.
Did you ever look at one and go, "Oh, shoot, I should have made sure that got in"?
At this point, no, I don't. The book's such it's. I'm not sure what it is at this point. It's almost as if someone else wrote it. So I don't have too many regrets about what I did or what I didn't do.
Oh. Well, it is a wonderful book, and I'm wondering, as well, in the book, the narrator talks about being a social experiment, and I found that fascinating. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about that a bit.
Yeah, sure. It references Du Bois and the Talented Tenth and the plan of taking the top 10% of certainly African American or black or Negro or colored or whatever you want to call it, educating them in the classics and languages and Western altruism, and then sending them back into the community to lift that other 90%. Of course, Booker T. Washington is saying, give everyone a trade and become middle class, own land, savings, and then you'll have a voice in the populace. So they they're in some ways diametrically opposed, but in others they're not, because learning the language is the trade. It's that Du Bois seems so abstract. So his understanding of the social experiment is that you take somebody out and you do something to them, and then you redeposit them back into wherever it was they originated or came from, and set them loose and expect for them to apply what they've learned to this situation.
The pressure of which...
Yeah, it's like the Skinner box, right? Or something like that, or boot camp.
Well, you feel for the character a great deal. I wonder, actually, how did you come up with the idea for the book?
Would you like which version of the answer would you like? It changes.
We've got a couple minutes before break, so the 2-minute version.
I was writing a short story. I think I just started teaching English 120, which is freshman comp at Hunter College. I had 3 sections, and I was absolutely broke. And to take my mind off of that, I started writing a short story, which was this. And a friend kept telling me that it wasn't a short story, that it was a novel. And I said, I don't want to write a novel. And so you have to write a collection or 2 novellas or a novel to get an agent and do those things. And I resisted it. And
why didn't you want to write a novel?
I never wanted to be a novelist. I think I was still hanging on to pulling my guitar out or writing poems or making films. I got my MFA and I didn't write for 5 years. I started making puppet movies, really. So this was going back to it, and I realized doing the laundry one day that it was a novel, and so I started writing it.
Just sort of grit your teeth and say, all right, if I've got to.
Well, it was a good thing to keep people off my back. What are you doing? I'm writing a novel. Great. And so, how's it going for 6 months? And the next 6 months was, is it done? So I kind of bought a year of being, pursuing something. So I guess that's the cynical or truthful answer. But I also wanted to do it. I had no intention of selling it or doing anything like that. I just wanted to make it. In the end, I just wanted to type the last sentence of the book, and so that was my compulsion to finish it.
Well, and it's a perfect time to take a break.
Okay.
So I'm talking with Michael Thomas, the author of Man Gone Down. Please join us after the break.
As a director of arts education for Algonquin Arts Theater, I get to give students the opportunity to be creative in all areas of the performing arts. I love working with the children. I love seeing them be excited about something that I too enjoy and am passionate about. So to be able to give them the skills that I know and love, it's amazing to see them get excited about it as well. I didn't go into college wanting to be a great student. I loved performing arts, and that's where I wanted to focus. But right from my beginning of freshman year, I completely changed that mindset by going in and studying things I never thought I was going to study. So today, I don't think the job that I do as Director of Arts Education would have been something I would have been doing without the skills that I learned through Brookdale. My name is Julie Nagy, and I am the Director of Arts Education for Algonquin Arts Theater, and I got my start at Brookdale. Hey, Zachary.
Ready?
Yes. You looking good. Great hit.
The odds of a child becoming a professional athlete are 1 in 16,000. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 166. The odds say it's time to listen. To learn the signs of autism, visit autismspeaks.org.
Here are the low monthly payments and interest rate as we promised. Here's where they triple. The rest of this is really just here so that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us and protect yourself with the facts.
Hi, and welcome back to the Brookdale Visiting Writers Series show. My name is Suzanne Parker, and I'm talking today with Michael Thomas, author of Man Gone Down, a fabulous book. I wanted to ask you, when I was reading up about the book and also reading some of the reviews, which were glowing about the book, they were wonderful. The Washington Post review said, and I loved this quote, that in many ways the narrator is a 21st century man with a mid-20th sensibility.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
No, because I didn't read the review, but...
Did you read any reviews?
No.
That's good. Well,
No.
they were all great.
Okay, good. That's good.
But I wonder how you interpret that comment from them.
Wow, I don't want to contradict a good review, so... Yeah, I guess that's... I guess that's true, but I think I thought of him as more of a late 19th century man, which I guess could be a mid 20th century man, caught somewhere between end of Romanticism and modernity or something like that, which is, you know, like Fitzgerald or Eliot or people like that.
All right.
Yeah. Or Allison or Baldwin even, yeah.
Huh.
Disciples of Thoreau or Douglas or, you know, Van Gogh or any of those people, or James for Baldwin.
There's so many references in this book to other artists or musicians or writers in some way that I was dying to know, what were you reading when you wrote this? Were you reading all those people you were referencing, or are these just touchstone authors for you?
Well, was I reading them? I always read them. I always have to read the same thing. And I don't want to divulge too much about my monomania. But yeah, I think it references Allison and the structure. It references Baldwin, or alludes implicitly, explicitly. It does the same with Eliot, and there are Eliot quotes throughout, and Dylan and Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly and Robert Johnson and Bob Marley. But yeah, I'm always listening to those people, and I'd like to think I always will. And Fitzgerald, obviously.
Right. Great. The book won a number of awards, and one of them was the Impact Dublin Literary Award, which is an international award, and a huge, huge deal. And I was just wondering how winning that award, how that sort of affected you as a writer, or did it in any way?
Yeah, you know, I have to think about this answer, because when people asked me at the time, I think I might have seemed or sounded glib or smug or cavalier, and I didn't mean that. I think I was stunned, and I'm still not sure what to say about it. It bought me time. It calmed my house down, my literal house, my family life. It afforded me a lot of time, and I think it rescued me and my family from anxiety, the anxiety of years of trying to make things and not just write. But I think the other thing I tried to explain was that it wasn't a validation, in that the way, and you're right, so the way your work appears to you and the way it appears to an audience, or an audience perceives it, is very different. I don't mean to presume these things about the way you think about your work, but it's very Baldwin and Sonny's Blues. They're two different perceptions, and so to receive an award for something that I had written a while ago was strange, because I'm not sure what that thing is. One, because I'm looking at something else. Two, I don't really remember being that person who wrote it. And then there's the difficulty of reconciling art and commerce, or art and money, and wondering if you're just a banker in disguise, which isn't so bad, or if my anxiety has to do with a lack of money, and why am I doing this? Is this what I always wanted? And then also examining my examination of, well, why isn't this doing anything to me? What is going to work?
So interesting hearing you say all that, because
if
it
that
mirrors.
Makes any sense at all?
Oh, it does, though.
Okay.
But it mirrors this. I mean, for someone, and this is your first book, and I mean, that's an incredible award to win. So if it were me, I probably would have been pretty shocked.
Yeah, I was shocked.
And I mean, not necessarily. I hadn't had a few books and had some practice with some smaller awards first. But what you were saying really mirrors a lot of the thoughts or some of the thoughts and emotions of the narrator in the book.
I was shocked, but in some ways I wasn't. In some ways I expected it. Because I've told my students, don't you want to be great? what's the point of doing anything? You know, you can fail, and it's kind of the best kind of failure, you know. Be Icarus and plummet, or be Orpheus and leave your love on the ascent from the underworld and just get torn to shreds, you know.
But it's a great failure.
It's a tremendous failure. So yeah, receiving the award, that was difficult to reconcile. And then I thought of, you know, how can I, and I almost swore, I'm not sure, this is cable though, how can I screw this up? You know, how can I sabotage it? Which became, again, point and counterpoint, just angry with myself for thinking that, and then really enthralled by planning how I could do it. But lastly, and I think for anything is, you know, I grew up in a, let's just say, a difficult environment. I've been called a lot of things. Most of them aren't good. And so, I mean, how do you let in compliments or praise when you've been shutting out the epithets or the profanities that have been hurled? So
That's interesting.
yeah, it's maybe just being stubborn or just getting crotchety or something like that.
Well, you didn't start off as a novelist, though, right? You began by writing, when you were younger, poetry.
I wrote really, really bad poems, to girls and to stray dogs and things like that, and journals and strange essays. And we're really trying to mimic the people I loved, and I wrote a lot of songs. And I did that throughout. And I wrote short stories. That's all I really wanted to do with fiction, write short stories in my spare time. But when I got into an MFA for poetry and one for fiction, so I chose fiction because, as you know, you poets don't make a ton of money, right? So
There's no money in poetry.
So I sold out for the fiction.
You're really psyched if your prize is $1,000.
Yeah. So I sold out, you know, and went and enrolled in the fiction program.
But now you're doing nonfiction, I read. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so
well,
how
I read
is
a lot
that?
more nonfiction when I was younger.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Now, at this moment, or when I decided I was going to write the nonfiction?
Well, I guess I'm just interested in the transition from fiction to nonfiction. Was it because there's so much similarity in a way, or can be so much similarity in the way certain nonfiction authors, literary nonfiction authors, approach the genre. So I'm just interested in sort of how each one speaks to you.
Well, it again began as a plan. You know, I had a plan why I was going to do this, and then write a second novel after it. And then cynically, you know, nonfiction sells better. But I also had an idea. There was something I wanted to write, and I had written a nonfiction essay about one of my boys. And I wanted to expand it into something larger. And that's something, again, Baldwin and Ellison did. And I wanted to pay tribute to them. And I thought I could model something after their work. So that's how I started. And it was a great plan back then. And now it seems like a very misguided attempt to do something. You know, I have to finish it. I want to finish it. I want it to be what I intended it to be. I approach it in the same manner, like the language, right? The level of the word. I ask it to do the same things, and I ask myself to pay attention and do the best job I possibly can with diction and syntax and things like that, and structure, and so it follows that formula. But what one can do with fiction is, when you get stuck, you know, you can just create something else. With nonfiction, when I'm stuck with a narrative because I don't want to expose somebody, which is usually me, there's really nowhere to go except to contemplate the narrative, and without fabricating things. And so you either include how you looked at the story then, and how you look at it, or how you look at it now, or how you'd like to look at it. But that can, again, it's a tangential.
Do we have a book coming soon then?
We do have a book coming soon. Yeah.
Is there a date?
There is, there are dates. There's a window, let's say.
A window.
Yeah, there's a window.
Great.
I guess April or May of next year.
Fantastic.
So it's a nonfiction book. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have a title?
I do.
Can you say it?
I can.
Okay.
It's called The Broken King.
The Broken King.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we have to go.
Okay.
But it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and I will look forward to The Broken King.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on our show, and thank you for watching. This has been the Brookdale Visiting Writer Series. Please join us next time.